back. And ultimately, they do distribute the chores differently, and she gets to fix the car, because that's what she likes best. Again, not subtle. So this is the kids noticing what's changed. They feel guilty. They realize how much she's been doing. They don't want their mother to leave again, so they'd probably do anything. So what should we do? Let's go home and find out who does each chore and discuss how all the members feel about their chores. So they made a chore chart and filled it out. Data gathering is what they're doing. And the blank at the bottom is maybe there's a different chore they haven't thought about. What they find: moms did a lot of work each day. Many dads helped out in the house but did more outside the house. Some students were required to make their own beds, but they grumbled about the chores they had to do, some of them. And then they were also surprised to find out that people didn't like doing some of the chores they had. Like moms, some moms didn't like cooking or hated folding laundry. I guess no one really likes doing that stuff, says some kids. So what are the solutions? Well, maybe they should be rotated. Maybe the person not working outside the home should do more in the home. Maybe you should have music while you do your chores. And when I mow my lawn, I listen to Hamilton, you know? And work with your partners, joke around. What changes should I make? Oh, well, maybe I should empty the dishwasher. Maybe I should make my own bed. Maybe I should be responsible. So back to Dewey, education is not preparation for life. It is life itself. And then I couldn't resist throwing in Betty Friedan here, women of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your vacuum cleaners. So what really happened here? What are the kids doing? Go back to UDL. What are they doing? First of all, the teacher is representing information in a variety of ways. They have picture books. They have real-life people coming into their classroom whom they're interviewing and whom they're hearing speak. They're also touching real things as they go out with putting banana peels in. They're exploring real-world topics. They're engagement, right? They're engaged in critical thinking. They're making connections. They're having deep discussions. They're assessing the reliability of sources. And then action and expression. What are they doing? They're sharing their learning with others. They're taking action, and they're always keeping their antenna up, which is what good citizens do. So teachers provide all these opportunities. So can professors. These two books up here are here because this is where the examples were taken from. Every book is a social studies book, was written with two former students, Joni Kipling and Jeanette Belantic. And then the exemplary elementary social studies book is case studies of people teaching K through 6, some of which are seen in this PowerPoint. Okay, I'm done. Marilyn, are you there? Okay, you are. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Marilyn DePietto. I'm a very new professor here in the School of Ed. Thrilled to be here. And I've spent the last 20 years of my career as a teacher in various classrooms in New York City. And I'm really thrilled to be able to share my own experiences with my graduate students who are pre-service teachers so they can bring these lessons forward and teach them themselves. So I'm going to be talking about some teenage angst today. Some of you may be familiar with teenage angst. So I had a class of 8th graders. I was teaching Algebra 1, and they were actually lovely kids, right? Most of the time they would, come in, they'd give me a high five, they'd sit, they'd kind of, do what they needed to do. We had group work, we had discussions, we had presentations, we had all these sorts of things. And they were, boisterous, and they had a lot of personality, and they were, as bubbly and friendly as 13 and 14-year-olds really could be. Then one day, as they were coming in from lunch during 7th period, I noticed a complete difference in their body language. They were kind of slumped around, they were, arms were crossed, they were stomping in. Most of them weren't even responding to my greeting. They, sort of plopped down in their chairs. Some of them put their heads down. And, I was kind of, cautiously wondering, what was making everybody so upset. So I asked, because it was clear that no instruction was going to go on while everybody was in this state. And my whole class sort of erupted into this many-headed monster of teenage angst about the hoodie policy in our school. So I just want to say a word about hoodies. This was the scene of injustice that they were telling me about. So I just want to talk for a few seconds about hoodies, right? So hooded sweatshirts are part of the culture of teenagers in New York City. I would say not even teenagers, right? Just kids in general. They want their hoodies, right? This style choice transcends race, class, age. Everybody wears hoodies, right? Kids feel like it's part of their identity. Some of them seem like they feel like it's part of their person sometimes. The policy in my school was that hoodies were not allowed. Okay, so I just wanted to, so this is not actually my school. I just wanted a picture, so I literally Googled the words middle school cafeteria, and this is what came up. And everybody is wearing a hoodie in this picture. So the hoodie policy in my school is that hoodies were not allowed. This policy was randomly enforced. Some days it was fine and everybody wore hoodies and unremarked upon. And then other times there were random days where the administration decided this was the day, right, that they were going to run around and confiscate hoodies from all over the building. There was no student input into this rule. And there were also some exceptions, meaning, if some kids or their parents, more likely, were a big enough pain, they could just wear a hoodie and it was fine. But everybody else got the hoodie confiscated, right? So lots of injustice. So my lesson for that day was about linear regression modeling. So these students were not interested in linear regression modeling because what had happened that day was in the cafeteria, the administration went down and decided to take every last hoodie away from every kid, right? They were furious because it had been weeks, since they had taken them away, right? They thought, everyone thought it was fine. A lot of kids were upset, particularly girls were upset because they expected to be wearing a hoodie and they felt, kind of exposed when they weren't wearing it because whatever they were wearing underneath it, they didn't feel comfortable in. So I was hearing a lot of these sort of gripes about the hoodie policy. So I'm wondering, sort of in this moment, what I'm going to do, because nobody wants to hear about linear regression right now. So I started sort of reviewing what we talked about yesterday, which is that quantitative variables can be correlated, right, in a way that's either weak or strong. And that sort of tells you a little bit about how related they are, right? We also talked a little bit about correlation and causation and the differences between those things. So I started, just kind of gently reminding them about what we did yesterday. Then I wondered out loud, I wonder if there's a correlation between hoodie wearing and other behaviors. And there was just an eruption because everybody was absolutely sure that there definitely was not a correlation. So I kind of prodded them a little bit in this direction where they were going to come up with a study that they were going to present to the principal to demonstrate that hoodie wearing was not impacting them negatively in any way. So I started asking some of these questions, right, about what are quantitative variables? What's a statistical question? How can you ask that question in a way that's very clear? How could we gather data? And they started coming up with their own ideas about what to do. So I have one, I did everything in a Google form. This is one example. So Chris and William here, I don't know if you can read it. The X variable was the number of hoodies that you own, and the Y variable was your GPA. So they're looking to see if there's a correlation between the number of hoodies that you own and your GPA. So they worked in groups of 2 or 3. Every group had their own questions, right? Some were asked about to rate their satisfaction with school on a scale of 1 to 5 or something. Some asked about the number of disciplinary referrals they received. So there were all these different variables, right, that they were trying to see whether there was a relationship with either number of hoodies that you own or the number of times per week you wear hoodies, or they had all these different statistical questions. And I had them write their actual questions in this Google form before they actually started collecting data. This required a little bit of revision because a lot of them were learning that you can ask a question, but it might not be clear. So they had to go around and ask each other the questions to see if they were clear. So these 2 students came up with how many hoodies do you own, and what is your GPA rounded to the nearest whole point? Because, some of these honors kids are really concerned that it's a 92.3 and not a 92.1, so they wanted to round to the nearest whole point. I also had them come up with a hypothesis, right? So before they actually collected the data, I wanted them to come up with a hypothesis. And some of them got a little sassy, and I'll just read this out loud in case you can't read it. So Chris and William said, "We think there will be absolutely no correlation between these two variables. We think this because it is absurd to imagine that somebody's style choices could have any effect on their grades. There's no way that people who have more hoodies would somehow have worse grades. They have nothing to do with each other. We think the correlation coefficient will be 0, and that means no direction because they are, all caps, unrelated." So that was their hypothesis. So all the students went around, they posted these survey questions on Google Classroom, they got their data, and it turned out that almost all of them had absolutely no correlation, right? And of course, we talked about some weak correlation because it's very hard to get an actual 0 as a correlation coefficient. But so this was their plan for collecting data, right? They were going to post everything. Everybody needed to get at least 90 points of data. They put everything into a spreadsheet. They had a graph. They had all these things to show all these coefficients. These were some student questions that I heard that I just wrote down as I was kind of walking around, helping students, finish their projects and just kind of hearing their conversations and assessing. So I have two favorites from this list. My first favorite is, what would happen if I take out this outlier because it seems like this kid was just being an idiot? And the situation there was somebody wrote that their GPA was like 250 or something, right? So that didn't make any sense, right? So they're looking at the data, they're noticing, first of all, that it's an outlier and calling it that, understanding that it's going to change, right, the statistical test, and also recognizing that it's impossible, right? Like that can't be a real answer for a kid's GPA. My other favorite, which possibly was even better, was Miss Miller was the principal of the school. Did Miss Miller actually do any research before she came up with this policy? And just like Andrea spoke about that sort of like aha moment with the elephant, like that's exactly how I felt when kids were asking questions like this. We're learning how to do things so that we can engage in our society, right? And think about how to change things for the better, right? So moving forward from that task, that was really sort of a turning point in my own instruction. This was several years ago. Moving forward, we didn't always talk about hoodies from that point when we got to the linear regression unit, but I did change the task so that I always had students come up with their own variables about something that mattered to them. Right, so they were able to do a study on anything they wanted. Right, some of them wanted to do something about phone use and happiness, or the amount of minutes of YouTube you watch every day versus your GPA. Right, so they were able to kind of investigate anything that they wanted and have a genuine audience to present it to. So between representation and engagement and the actual action of presenting their findings for a purpose to a genuine audience, really sort of coalesce this universal design for learning the way Gloria explained it before. So that's it. Now I'm going to turn it over to Gloria to finish us up. Thank you.
Hi, everyone, again. Can I tell you one more time how I'm so happy that everybody's here? We always think, what if you gave a party and nobody came? Or in my day, what if you gave a war and nobody came? We're still trying to figure that one out. Anyway, this was the beauty of, and I don't know, did you just feel the beauty of 3 fabulous teachers? And that's what I mean. You don't have to go very far. And you just don't have to go very far. So thank you for the 3 of you. It was fabulous. So now I have to talk to you just a little bit more about universal design for learning. I've spent my life as a special ed teacher and revising and adapting and changing things that are already there. It's like endless. And so universal design for learning really talks about doing something beforehand. It's intentional. So we have people going apple picking. And so you can see that somebody noticed that maybe some people might need boxes. And so on the first part of this, there's the 3 people, and everyone gets the same box. And, because that's fair. That's fair. And as a special educator and as an advocate for students, when I hear, well, it's not fair that that student gets this. Anyway, it's the next one is that each person says, and this is great, okay, we know that everybody's not the same size, and, I'm short, so I really do think about this, and so each person gets the size box they need, and that's called differentiation. But it's 3 different boxes. So we as teachers, if we differentiate, it is endless, the amount of materials that we need to do for different groups and changing and that. But universal design for learning says that each person, well, what we would do would say, oh, maybe each person gets an adjustable box. In this case, because we don't have adjustable box, how about a ladder? I can go to any rung on this ladder and be able, whatever size I am. So that's an example of universal design for learning. And because I know our attention span is getting very limited and shorter, we're going to do some storytelling now. And no matter what the age, kids love to be told stories. So I have a class, SPED 277, and I teach 1 credit of it, and it's a technology class. And so in one of the assignments that I do in my portion of it is that students have to use either Canva or Book Creator to create, and this is where the engagement comes in, this is where the different modes of representation come in, to create storybooks for students. And so these graduate students authored these gorgeous learning tools. And I'm laughing to myself because at one point, it was years ago, there was something called sponge painting. I don't know. The people would take perfectly beautiful walls and get a sponge and dip it into another color paint and sponge it, right? And I went to a party, and it was hysterical because this person's house, the toilet cover, the nightstands, everything was sponge painted. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because I love this book creator so much that I'm like saying I'm making a book out of everything. So anyway, what you're going to see, which I am, right? And well, anyway, I'm just going to go now. So these original children's books engage students because they're targeted and customized. So there's multiple ways that things can be represented. So with Book Creator, you can do speech to text, you can insert videos, photographs, audio, so that students then can listen to them, read them, and experience them in different ways. So I want to show you one that I have a few that I'd like to show at least parts of, and this one is, I think I can go here, yeah. This one is about Bella and Bella's day at the beach, yeah. So she woke up early in the morning, it was a beautiful day, and her mom said, let's go to the beach, but Bella goes to the beach and is a little bit, she feels shameful of her body. So her wonderful mother talks to her, explains that no 2 people look exactly alike. Your body is strong, kind, and beautiful, just like you, her mom says. And so now Bella starts splashing in the water, making sandcastles, and has a great day and has a great day at the beach. I think it's beautiful. And Bella isn't the person in the class, but you know that in your class you might have a few kids that feel this way. And that's something that you can do, right? So the next one I love too, because it just doesn't have to be about self-esteem. This teacher wanted to talk about, there's another way of going about categorizing books now, which is called genre categorization. And so Dewey is a ghost from the past, the Dewey Decimal System. And Dewey takes the students through a library. And the person put in a glossary, put down text. Dewey is, going through the library and saying, okay, we're in the mystery section, we're in the fantasy section, biography, poetry, and that this is really a great way of categorizing, and this is a thing. And it's the end, and then this teacher also put in a couple of activities. The next one that I'd like to show you is about this little girl who didn't like to try new things, and wouldn't you know, the things that she loved was pizza and brownies and pasta and cupcakes, and she's not feeling very well, but because she has celiac. And so the mother talks to her about celiac and that she has to try new things and how that's going to be. And her mom, of course, is saying trying new things wasn't scary forever. Sometimes it even leads to something better. And I mean, I'm sure that in your head you can think of a million possibilities of what to do with this, as far as different encounters that students have and that they worry about. This is a lifestyle. This is just a little story about the lifestyle of a butterfly. But you can see that the format is so engaging, and you can customize it every way that you would like to do it. It could be long. It could be short. This was done with Canva, and it was about a boy who had dysgraphia, and so each of the kind of, in a comic book kind of way, went on to say how writing is hard, but there's different ways that we can do things about it. And a person in an English high school class was working with a group of students, and I visited her, and it was first period, and it was what they call self-contained special ed class, but it was Regents level. So these kids were, 16 years old. There were maybe 8 kids in the class. The teacher was doing The Great Gatsby. They come into class, and when high schools start, 7 o'clock in the morning. And she couldn't get them to write. She couldn't get them to do anything. And so they were reading and listening to The Great Gatsby. And every day they had to do a summary. And so we decided that they would do a graphic novel summary instead of a paragraph summary. And with this, then they could actually use it again. Those summaries that all kids are made to do, they're never. Am I okay on time? Okay. So that's another idea. And then this one, I told this student, I think you have to go into writing children's books. And this one was a little gardener. And it talks about a little girl and a grandfather. The grandfather gives her a packet of seeds. The little girl, she was so excited because the seeds are growing. And then she forgot to water them. And of course the grandpa says, it's okay, we all forget things, but plants need water, they need light. So luckily she was able to revive these flowers, and life went on. It's just such a beautiful story. So you can see that with universal design for learning in the forefront, that all of these stories could be given in a special way. So imagine the beautiful possibilities of teachers facilitating. And so in the sponge paint tradition, I decided that I would make some books a book for Alan, for what I want for Christmas and Hanukkah. And so this little girl could make a book about what she wants. And just as a little aside, I hope I have enough time with this, my daughter and I never kept one of them. Not a good mother, but every Christmas she would cut out from advertisements what she wanted and where I could get them, and I mean it was very good. So Alan, if you want me to keep on going with that book, I'll be happy to do it. And then the first graders from Miss Skipling's class, all about garbage. Wouldn't this be fun? Do you know kids do things and then they're gone. They're just constantly doing things, and they wind up in a folder. They wind up, and this is just such a great opportunity. And this one I love because don't count us out because it's math, and it was for the hoodies. And I thought, wow, I think this class should present the principal with this book, which has all of the findings all at once. So the beauties of you coming out? Yeah. So I hope that you see the beauty that we're talking about, and thank you very much.
Yeah, and now my colleagues are going to join us on stage, and this is the Q&A portion of the program. But I hope what you noticed is the sort of synergy of what we do at different levels with different kinds of students, but we're all committed to having students do the bulk of the work facilitated by teachers, and so that students can make the world better, their society better, their school better, their own lives better, etc. So I think this comes up, is my sense. And yeah, it comes up slowly but surely. And this is the point where people get to ask questions, make comments, etc. We always ask that people keep them brief enough that a variety of people can speak, but there's no penalty for questions, no penalty for comments, so please feel free. You see mics are there. Go to the mics. Please add on your thoughts. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I am a third-year doctoral student in the School of Education. I'm also a K-1 assistant principal in the second year, and I'm looking for ways to make meaning for the international phonetic alphabet that I learned as a music undergrad major 20 some odd years ago, and learning how to teach phonics instruction for early elementary school using Wilson's Foundations. What would you suggest for me?
This is all you, buddy.
Well, I guess this one's for me, right? The thing, I guess the place to begin is to recognize the language resources that kids already have and begin there. What are they able to write? What messages are they able to construct? What do they already know about lettered and sound correspondences, like you saw in the list? Because, when children are engaged in reading and writing continually for their own purposes, the inventions that they have begin to become socially conventionalized. So I think the best thing that you can do is have multiple opportunities for them to read the text that are real text, genuine text that they like to read, so they have accessibility and opportunity, and continued opportunities for writing, and then see what resources they can bring to the activities that you want to generate for them. So.
I have a follow-up question. And scaffolding this for multilingual language learners, any words of wisdom there?
It's a very similar response. It's important to recognize that all children have language resources, and if a child is an English language learner, it's really important to get them to make that bridge between what they already know in their home language with the language that you're seeking to control. So again, multiple opportunities for them to use the language that they have to approximate the target language that you're seeking them to learn.
Thank you.
Can I add?
Please.
What I would say, and this is where the UDL comes in, and that to make sure that you don't make slow progress definitional for kids, that with UDL they have opportunities to show what they know in other ways. And while we have to work on decoding skills and encoding skills and all kinds of things, and we have all these programs that might be helping, and I think that we absolutely should be working with that. Don't let go of the other side, and that's why the storybooks I thought were so important, because it can't be definitional if a child is taking a while to break the code and to be able to really attain what you want them to attain.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you. Keep them coming. Remember, you can, besides coming to the mic to ask a question, you could be telling us, because we know we have a bunch of people who have taught or currently teach in the room, you could be telling us some kind of beautiful teaching moment in your own lives. So, and we know you have some. Oh, that did it.
Well, it's not a beautiful moment.
That's okay.
So I'm student teaching right now in a first grade classroom where the writing and reading skills are drastically varied. And the CT I'm working with has been teaching for decades, and she says she can't remember the last time she's had a class with this, with these varied levels for reading and writing. What open-ended opportunities will we be able to provide the students with so that they are all able to participate in an activity and so that we are able to, throughout the year, through these activities, assess where they are and how they're progressing and what they're doing? Because right now we have a lot of differentiation in small groups where students are doing different things, but not whole class as much.
Do you want to start with your literacy?
So Sasha, right?
Yes.
By the way, Sasha's the person that provided that Johnny Appleseed example that I showed earlier. So you're seeing a wide disparity of what kids can do in one classroom, right?
Yes.
So the question is, how can they all be involved, or what?
So we have observations coming up, and I want to be able to provide the students all with opportunities to be able to write, but we have some students who are only able to write when they're tracing over things, some who can refer to spelling, and others who are ready to write sentences independently. Mm-hmm. And I want to be able to provide them all with the best activities that would be most beneficial for them all as a group.
So having them work together, and so are there opportunities for children who already are comfortable readers and writers to scaffold those who are just coming along? Are they working together across groups? Is that?
I've seen them working together in math, but not yet in literacy. They have had times when they're allowed to pull books off of the book rack and they sit down on the carpet together, and I see the students who can read tend to group with those who can't, and they'll go through a book together, but there has been no formal set time.
Well, that's a great idea, and that's something that can be formalized, especially if the more capable readers are reading to the new language learners, books that are patterned and predictable and can do what we know is a good practice, which is to scaffold and then gradually release responsibility. So have them read together in shared reading activities, and having the more confident reader then slowly drop out and release responsibility for something which is where the pattern can be easily grasped by the new language learner. That will be very useful. And also, when it comes to writing, writing is where children are really going to teach themselves sound symbol correspondences. For young writers who are very, very concerned about getting things right, to give them ample opportunity to make language, to create language events for themselves, even if they're unsure how to make sounds. So an example that springs to mind is some learners that I had at the beginning of the year where I really could barely make out what they were writing, and it looked like almost static to me. But through repeated opportunities to like dialogue journal, to write stories with other kids, there comes a point where all of a sudden, and this just seemed magical to me, all of a sudden out of the static, out of the noise, started coming comprehensible, productions of language. So multiple opportunities and accessibility is really going to be key. Not just in limited amounts of time, certain times of the day, but spread throughout the day, where more capable learners are helping those who are less confident.
And if I just add to that, in a literacy plus social studies vein, that language isn't just reading and writing, it's talking. And so there can be a lot of discussion going on, a turn and talk, where you democratize the discussion so that in turn and talk with pairs, everybody's heard, instead of a full class kind of thing where you might get to 7 kids. So if people have more opportunity, even if they're not at the level they wish to be in reading and writing yet, they may well be at that level in talking. And the talking is language production. They just haven't translated it yet to the page, but it is language production and will help them translate it to the page as well.
I'd like to add, and thanks, Andrea and Alan. If we think UDL, if you go down a corridor in an elementary school, you're going to see by each classroom either pictures, right? It's a snowman. And it's always the same snowman, and they're supposed to color it or paste things on it, and everybody has to do the same thing, right? Or if it's a writing. And my heart just breaks when I walk down corridors in elementary schools, because there's children that will write 10 sentences about a snowman, and children that might write 2 sentences, and it might have the spelling errors, which I won't call errors, right? And that Alan is giving value to those things that look like whatever. And so when you say that you're going to be observed, and you want a whole class, and you want that whole class to do the same thing, right?
I want them all to benefit as much as
well,
possible.
so
I don't
that's-
want them all to do the same thing. I am open to doing group work, and I was thinking about partnering them up just so that they're all provided with like you said earlier, the most fair opportunity possible, because I want to use that time value.
So exactly, so that's great. So I would think about what do I want to accomplish in this lesson? Do I want them to, is the goal of the lesson to read something and answer questions? Is it paper and pencil? Is it to read a storybook? You said it was young, right?
Yes, first grade.
Is it to read a storybook and to understand the storybook and give examples from their own lives? If that's the goal, then they can do it in multiple different ways. And you still have the whole group. So either they're talking to each other, or they can express the moral of the story by cutting things and making a picture about it, or something else. And if I was observing your class and you did that you gave them choices, which is big UDL, and multiple ways that they could show you that they knew the moral of the story, that they understood the story, I would give you 5 stars.
And
That's me.
And if I might add one other point, one of the reasons we might want to write is we have something of value to write about. So that Christmas list was a value, right? That matters. Get me these gifts. I need them. Wants and needs, social studies. But another thing of value is whatever it is they care about, right? So whatever issue gets discussed in a class of first graders that they have decided is important is of value and may give them more of a reason to want to write or read about that issue. I mean, that was the whole reason for not having the, See-Spot Run books, because they were not of value, right? That people didn't want to read them because they weren't worth reading. Versus things that kids care about, and Gloria's books go to that issue of the books created, and creating those books, even if they can't officially write yet, they have ideas, and the book creation can help them formulate those ideas and gives them aid in making those ideas come to fruition.
Thank you very
Good
much.
luck.
Yes, report back. Other comments, questions, sharing of examples? See, in teaching, this is called wait time. You have to go to the mic because they're recording this, so they need to hear you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm a colleague of all of these great teachers here.
Oh, don't sit down. You can go behind her.
You can go. Yeah, you can be in line
queue
next.
up.
You're next. It's fine.
We don't want to lose you.
I was just thinking about social media and what kind of thoughts you might have in terms of how positive social media use, if you believe that there is positive aspects, how you might fit that into the UDL design, or think about it in terms of gaining their interest, choosing a topic they're interested in, such as Marilyn talked about with the hoodies. Every question is a social studies question, how, just any thoughts on bringing social media in?
Okay. I will say that when we did that lesson, there was quite a bit of social media posting about it, because again, it drew from very genuine feelings, and kids post about things that they have really genuine, strong feelings about. And there were kids posting about correlation coefficients on Twitter,
That's awesome.
hashtag linear regression, they were there, and it became kind of a thing in the school. And just in case anybody was wondering, it didn't end as well as you want it to. But they kind of whipped up a bit of a following about how, well, these policies don't have research to back them up. And, and kids were kind of, you say for, positive use of social media. I think that was a positive use of it, but there is this sort of gray area where it sort of could turn negative, right? And it's so hard to control, I think, is what makes people, I think, a little cautious.
So that principal didn't come out too well. In social media.
Well, no, she wasn't pleased.
And how
with
did the
my
whole
class.
thing end? I didn't. We never asked that question.
So they did present to the principal. I take some responsibility for it not going quite as well, because I probably should have, maybe given her a heads up that I was doing this. So I told her once.
Take note of that. Take note of that.
Yeah, so that was on me. But I did tell her what we did after it was done, and I was like, they'd love an audience with you to to kind of present it, and they didn't just kind of bamboozle her in the hallway one day. But she was not pleased with what I did, and ended up acquiescing a bit and deciding that moving forward, students could wear hoodies, but only if they were junior high school 194 hoodies. So the school sold hoodies, right? There's a lot of issues that came up there. So the school
Social
sold
studies,
hoodies.
capitalism.
So they were only allowed to wear them if they said junior high school 194. And some of my brilliant students, who I was so proud of, took masking tape and wrote junior high school 94 and stuck it on their own hoodies. So it didn't stop there.
I got to add in the social studies piece to this, obviously. So one thing is an ethical issue, right, of how we behave online and how we engage civically, and whether we engage in civil ways online or in person. And we do have data on this, and the data will surprise no one that people, when they're anonymous online, are emboldened and behave worse. But that's something worthy of discussion in one's class, it seems to me, no matter what. But that piece, yeah, the taking a cut of the hoodie operation, that's kind of going on right now in our country, isn't it? With companies of taking a cut for the federal government now, which is fascism. Let's call it what it is. But it seems to me. Social media is here, and people do need to know how to engage with it and how to engage with it in a civil way. But in terms of UDL, social media has way more ways to engage sometimes than other ways do, right? I mean, Instagram, allows people to have stories in pictures. That's not something we always go to as teachers, especially when we're out of elementary school. So, there are a lot of opportunities, of course, as well. Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm a student of the School of Education master program. I'm going to teach language probably in the future. I've been teaching it actually for more than 10 years in Taiwan. I have a question to Professor Flurkey about the beauty of literacy learning. I just want to know that is this kind of beauty carries this kind of childhood language learning beauty carries significance. For older kids, because I'm teaching like high school students for a long time. Usually when we see errors, we don't treat them as beauty. We don't like errors. I just want to know how do I teach, and is there any pedagogy that you would suggest that we can adopt in teaching to invite more beauty?
Sure.
To carry out more beauty in the learning of the language. For me to appreciate.
So, one of the things I think that we have to appreciate is the strengths that all language users have that they bring to any literacy event. And part of, I think, what's important there is to recognize what students are trying to communicate in high school, even though they produce errors. I think the first place that we need to begin looking is how successful is the let's take, for example, writing. How successful are they at generating a message? How successful are they at controlling a genre and beginning to help them see, help them find the tools to say what they want to say and be successful at that. So that's what we look at the outset, is how well they can control a message. And then once they're comfortable controlling a message and not worrying so much about the errors that they're making, then we can begin to work on the smaller pieces and parts of generating language, especially with new language learners. But they've got to be comfortable starting to use language in the first place. So I'm comfortable having writers produce misspellings at first and begin to look for where their misspellings are, if that's the issue. Because you'd be surprised, most writers are capable of finding their own misspellings, even as they generate them when they write. So beginning to pay attention to other examples in writing. Noticing is a very important part of controlling genre. Noticing what the key points are in the genre that you want to write, whether it's a memoir or whether it's a report. What other examples do you see? And then how can you begin to pattern your writing after those examples once you notice what the key aspects are. And then once you're writing, or as you're writing, begin to control those elements of grammar and spelling that you're seeking for them to control. Because that comes along over time, right? Kids have to practice. I think kids, but adults too. Kids have to actually generate language to improve their use of language. When I say language, I mean oral and written language. So, getting back to what Gloria was saying, the language users need to have accessibility and opportunity, and then you work within what you've been given.
I'd like to add that to find the beauty and the joy of the communication, no matter how they're communicating, so that if, again, you go to the goal of what you want. So if you want them to let you know that they've read this book and they understand something, or that they are writing a piece about a sport or something, if they first talk about it, if they second maybe do speech to text, and then third, then after that, because you want them to be able to write, they can write something, and then you work on that as far as the skill goes. But to what I often see, working for all these years with kids that are imprisoned sometimes for a very long time in not being able to write, and or to write the way we want them, or to read the way that we want them to. And you don't realize that probably 99% of what we expect kids to do is to read and then to write to show us that they know it. And so not emphasizing, not excluding being able to work on written language, because we want them to be able to write, but that cannot be the whole thing. Yeah.
Hear, hear. I see we are at the end of our time. So let me just say, A, thank you for coming. B, we appreciate seeing our students and colleagues here and others. And C, don't forget, this isn't the end of the Presidential Symposium. There's a whole nother day tomorrow, and then there's some other activities that are outside the 3 days. So we hope you'll go to many events on campus. Thank you very much. Thank you.